The crystal champagne flute felt cold in Serafina's hand, but not as cold as her mother-in-law's glare. "You must understand," Beatrice DeWitt hissed, just loud enough for the entire dinner party to hear, "that in our world, we don't wear that." She flicked a dismissive hand at Serafina's simple, elegant dress. "But I suppose a poor village girl from a place called Willow Creek can't be expected to know any better." Serafina's husband, Marcus, tensed beside her. He was a billionaire who could buy the world, but he was about to discover the one thing he didn't know. His poor village girl wife was connected to a secret that could destroy his mother's entire legacy. Serafina Hawthorne had never asked to be a DeWitt. She had been a librarian, content in the quiet, rolling hills of her small hometown, Willow Creek. Her life was books, community service, and long walks with her dog. Then Marcus DeWitt had stumbled into her library. He wasn't Marcus DeWitt, the tech billionaire then. He was just a man in a worn-out hiking jacket, exhausted by the relentless pace of New York City, seeking refuge. They talked for hours, not about his $20 billion acquisition of Etherlogics, but about her favorite authors. Not about his penthouse overlooking Central Park, but about the best apple-picking spots in Willow Creek. He was captivated by her genuine warmth, her quiet intelligence, and her complete, refreshing lack of interest in his last name. 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony at the Willow Creek Town Hall, with only her parents and his one trusted friend as witnesses. Marcus was blissfully happy. Serafina was his anchor, his peace. Then he introduced her to his mother. Beatrice DeWitt was not a woman. She was an institution. She had married into the DeWitt name, and now guarded its old money prestige with the ferocity of a dragon. She saw Serafina not as a daughter-in-law, but as a catastrophic social error, a stain on the family's pedigree. Willow Creek, Beatrice had scoffed at their first meeting, tapping her long red fingernail on a teacup. "I've never heard of it. It sounds damp." Tonight's dinner was no different. It was a gathering of Marcus's oldest family friends, a shark's nest of tailored suits and inherited diamonds, and Beatrice was the apex predator. The village girl comment from the hook hung in the air. Marcus put his hand on Sarah's. "Mother, that's enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Is it?" Beatrice smiled, a thin, cruel smile. "I am simply trying to educate the girl. She is a DeWitt now. She must represent us. She can't arrive at a party for the governor wearing a department store dress." "It's not from a department store," Sarah said quietly. "It was made by a friend in my town. Even worse, quaint." Beatrice turned to her friends. "She's so quaint, isn't she? My son, the man who conquered Wall Street, has brought home a little sparrow." Serafina looked down at her plate. She knew Marcus loved her, but she also knew he was locked in a battle with his mother that had started long before she arrived. He defended her fiercely, but Beatrice's attacks were relentless, a death by 1,000 paper cuts. "And your family, dear?" asked a woman with a face pulled impossibly tight. "Beatrice tells us they're simple folk." "My father manages family assets," Sarah said, repeating the line she'd always used. "My mother volunteers at the local hospital." Beatrice laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Manages assets? I'm sure he does. The family tractor, perhaps? The feed bill for the chickens?" Marcus stood up, throwing his napkin on the table. "This dinner is over. Sarah, we're leaving." "Run away, then," Beatrice called after them as they walked to the door. "But you can't hide her forever, Marcus. Legacy matters, and she has none." As the elevator doors closed, Serafina leaned her head on her husband's shoulder. She wasn't crying, not yet. She was just tired. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she whispered. "Don't you dare apologize," he growled, holding her tight. "This is her fault. This stops. Now." But Serafina knew it wouldn't, because a major event was approaching, one that Beatrice valued more than her own son, the DeWitt family annual charity gala. And Beatrice had just found her new target. The DeWitt family annual charity gala was not just a party. It was the pinnacle of the New York social season. It was held every year at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a place Beatrice DeWitt practically considered her second home. She was the chairwoman of the Gala Committee, a position she wielded with absolute power. This year, all proceeds were going to the museum's Legacy Wing for European Art. Beatrice was obsessed with legacy. It was her favorite word. It was, Serafina suspected, a word she used to cover up her own insecurities. In the weeks leading up to the gala, Beatrice's campaign against Serafina escalated from cruel whispers to open psychological warfare. "Serafina, darling," Beatrice had cooed over the phone. "Since you have so much free time, and you're not busy with, well, anything of importance, I've put you in charge of a few small tasks for the gala. It will help you learn how things are done." The small tasks were intentionally demeaning. Serafina was CEO'd on emails to the catering company, but only the ones discussing staff meals. She was asked to personally inspect the coat check racks and oversee the polishing of the staff's silverware. She was, in essence, being treated as the head housekeeper. Serafina, determined to be gracious, completed every task perfectly. She confirmed the staff meal counts. She inspected the coat check. She even complimented the custodial supervisor on the shine of the floors. This somehow made Beatrice even angrier. She had wanted Sarah to fail, or better yet, to have a tantrum. The quiet, dignified compliance was infuriating. Marcus, meanwhile, was buried. He was in the final stages of a $20 billion merger, a deal that would make him one of the most powerful men in the world. He worked 18-hour days, living on coffee and adrenaline. He saw his mother's frostiness, but missed the daily, grinding humiliation she was inflicting. "How are the gala plans?" he'd ask, kissing Sarah's forehead before falling into bed. "They're fine," Sarah would lie, not wanting to burden him. "Beatrice has it all under control." The day of the gala arrived. Serafina had used her own money, the modest trust fund her parents had given her, to buy a beautiful, understated, but undeniably expensive gown from a quiet couture designer. It was a deep emerald green, simple and elegant. She wanted, just for one night, to feel like she belonged. When she walked out, Marcus's jaw dropped. The merger, the stress, it all melted away. "Sarah," he breathed, "you look incredible. You really think so? I think I'm the luckiest man in the world." They rode to the gala in Marcus's black Rolls-Royce. For a moment, sitting beside her handsome husband, Serafina felt a flicker of hope. Maybe tonight would be different. It wasn't. The moment they stepped out onto the red carpet at the museum's entrance, the nightmare began. Beatrice was at the entrance, greeting senators and socialites. When she saw them, her smile tightened. She glided over. "Marcus, wonderful! You're late!" she snapped. Then she looked at Serafina. Her eyes raked over the beautiful gown. "Oh dear," she said, her voice dripping with false pity. "You tried so hard, didn't you? That color is very bold for a village girl." Before Sarah could respond, Beatrice turned to the lead security guard at the door. "This is my son, Marcus. He's fine. His guest," she said, gesturing to Serafina, "will need to be checked. She's not on my list." The security guard, a large man in a sharp suit, stepped in front of Serafina. "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't have a Serafina DeWitt on the master guest list." "What?" Marcus's voice was sharp. Mother, what is this game? She's my wife." "It's no game, Marcus," Beatrice said smoothly, addressing the crowd of onlookers who were now whispering. "It's simple protocol. We have a very high-profile guest list tonight. Governors, royalty. We can't just let anyone in. She must have forgotten to RSVP. You must understand, Serafina, these things are for the catering, the security. It's a simple task. I suppose you're not used to it." I didn't receive an invitation to RSVP to," Serafina said, her voice small. "Oh, nonsense. I sent it myself." Beatrice waved a dismissive hand. "Probably went to your spam folder. You do know how to check that, don't you?" The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot, creeping flush that spread up Serafina's neck. The society reporters, smelling blood, were edging closer, their cameras flashing. "Mrs. DeWitt, is there a problem?" one shouted. "No problem at all," Beatrice called back, smiling brightly. "Just a small clerical error. My son's wife is a little new to all this." Marcus was vibrating with rage. "Mother, you will let my wife in, or I will pull the entire DeWitt endowment from this museum tonight. Not another dime. I will call my bank right now." That, finally, wiped the smile from Beatrice's face. The DeWitt endowment was her primary source of social power. "Don't be so dramatic, Marcus. Fine." She snapped at the guard. "She's with him. Let her in." She then leaned in close to Serafina, her voice a venomous whisper no one else could hear. "You will never belong here, you shameless little village girl. You may have fooled my son with that wide-eyed, innocent act, but you don't fool me. You are a gold digger, a parasite. And by the time I'm done, he will see it too." Serafina's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She looked past Beatrice, past the smirking socialites, and stared at the grand entrance. She held her head high and, without a word, walked past her mother-in-law and into the gala. Marcus followed, his face a mask of cold fury. "We are having a conversation tomorrow, Mother," he said as he passed her. "A conversation you will not enjoy." They walked into the grand hall, but the night was already ruined. Everyone had seen. Everyone had heard. Serafina was a pariah. Beatrice's friends, women named things like Mrs. Astor Blackwood and Mrs. Vanderbilt Hayes, openly ignored her. They'd turned their backs when she approached. Waiters seemed to pass her by. She felt utterly and completely alone. Marcus, seeing her pain, led her to their table. "Sarah, I am so sorry. This is monstrous." "It's okay, Marcus," she whispered, though it clearly wasn't. "No, it's not." He looked around the glittering hall, at the smug, self-satisfied faces. His eyes landed on his mother, who was holding court by the stage, laughing. A cold, hard decision settled in his gut. "I'll be right back," he said. "Marcus, where are you going? Don't make a scene." "I'm not going to make a scene," he said, his voice flat. "I'm going to make some phone calls." He walked away, not toward his mother, but toward a private alcove near the restrooms. He pulled out his phone. He had been an idiot. He had been so focused on his merger that he'd let this fester. He had defended Sarah, but he hadn't investigated. He had let his mother define Serafina's family as poor farmers. He had just accepted it. But something about Sarah's quiet, unbreakable dignity, even in the face of that monstrous insult, made him realize, Beatrice is wrong. He just didn't know how wrong. Marcus stormed into the alcove, his fingers flying across his phone. His first call wasn't to a lawyer or a banker. It was to his private investigator, a man named Mike, who owed him several favors. "Mike, I need everything you have on a family named Hawthorne. Hawthorne, from a town called Willow Creek, population 3,000. What's the rush, boss? The rush is my mother just publicly humiliated my wife. I need it 10 minutes ago. Understood. Hawthorne from Willow Creek. Got it. His second call was to his chief financial officer, Richard. Richard, I know it's gala night, but I need you to open the files on my first startup. The seed funding. The capital that got me started before DeWitt Industries would even look at me. You mean the anonymous trust? Richard sounded confused. The Willow Creek Foundation? That's the one, Marcus said, a cold dread mixing with a strange excitement. I need to know who's on the board. I need to know who they are. Marcus, that's a black box. Their lawyers are ironclad. It's one of the most anonymous funds in the world. Then break it, Marcus ordered. I don't care what it costs or what laws you have to bend. I want a name. Now. He hung up and leaned against the marble wall. He remembered that first check. 500,000. It had appeared as if by magic after every other VC in the world had turned him down. It came with a simple, typewritten note. We believe in people who build. He'd always assumed it was some eccentric old money philanthropist. He'd never connected it. Willow Creek, Seraphina's hometown. He'd met her in the library. She was reading a first edition copy of The Great Gatsby. He'd made a joke about it. She'd smiled and said, "It's a tragedy, but everyone mistakes it for a love story. It's really about the danger of a hollow legacy." His phone buzzed. A text from Mike, the PI boss. "This is weird. There's nothing on the Hawthorns. No debt, no criminal records, no social media. Property records show they own a 20-acre farm. Paid cash in 1910. The property taxes are... Wait, the property taxes are being paid by a legal firm in Boston. A very big one." Marcus frowned. His phone buzzed again. "Richard, the CFO. Call me, now." Marcus hit the button. "What?" "Marcus, I don't know what's going on," Richard said, his voice hushed and frantic. "I can't break the Willow Creek Foundation. It's not a normal fund. It's a perpetual trust. It was set up in 1880. The assets are... Marcus, the assets are staggering. I'm not talking billions. I'm talking... I don't even know. It's sovereign wealth. It's one of the largest private foundations on Earth. They just don't publicize it." "Who controls it?" Marcus demanded. "It's anonymous. All I can find is the name of the original charter, the Hawthorne Bequest." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Hawthorne. Seraphina Hawthorne. "Wait, boss, like, you're Sarah?" "Keep digging, Richard. I need to know everything." He paced the alcove. "It's a coincidence. It has to be. A poor girl from a village, a humble librarian. But then he remembered her parents, their quiet, simple home. It was nice, yes, but modest. But her father, his hands. They weren't the hands of a farmer. They were soft, like a scholar's. And his eyes, they were sharp, assessing. And her mother. She'd discussed 18th century French poetry with him. He'd thought she was just well-read. His phone buzzed one last time, a text from Mike. "Boss. The Boston law firm. It's Sullivan and Cromwell. They don't pay property taxes for farmers." I called a contact. The Hawthorne family. They're not from Willow Creek. They founded it. As a refugee from New York society in the Gilded Age. Boss, they're not poor. They're the opposite. They're the people who invented old money and then decided they didn't want it. They own the land, all of it, the town, the hills, maybe the whole damn state. Marcus looked at his phone. Then he looked through the doorway into the grand hall. His mother, Beatrice, was stepping up to the podium on stage, a spotlight hitting her. She was about to give her big speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice echoing. Marcus pocketed his phone and started walking. He wasn't angry anymore. He was something else entirely. He was enlightened. As Marcus walked toward the stage, every piece clicked into place. The puzzle of Serafina, which had always been a beautiful mystery, was now a stunning, brilliant picture. Her simple dress, made by a friend? That friend was probably a world-renowned designer who lived in Willow Creek for the privacy. Her state school education? She'd likely gone there by choice, to avoid the spotlight of Harvard or Yale, institutions her family probably funded. Her modest trust fund. It was likely a modest-looking account that was, in reality, fed by a river of gold designed to protect her. He remembered her grandmother's words, which she'd repeated to him once. "The hawthorns are quiet, but we are deep." He was standing at the side of the stage now, in the shadows. On stage, his mother was in her element. "We are here tonight," Beatrice declared, her voice ringing with false sincerity, "to support the legacy wing. Because, as the DeWitt family knows, legacy is everything. It is who you are. It is your blood, your breeding. It is the foundation upon which we build our great society." Marcus saw Serafina at her table, watching his mother with a look of profound sadness. Beatrice continued, "It is what separates the thoroughbreds from the common stock." She didn't look at Sarah, but everyone knew who she meant. "We give," she said, thumping the podium, "because it is our duty as people of quality. It is our burden to lift up those less fortunate." Marcus's phone buzzed, a final email from his CFO, Richard. The subject line, "Holy hell." The body of the email was a single link to a very old, very private financial ledger from 1929. Marcus clicked it. It was a bailout record. The recipient, the Vanderbilt DeWitt Family Trust, Beatrice's maiden family. The amount, $50 million in 1929 money. The benefactor, anonymous via the Willow Creek Foundation. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. His mother's old money legacy. Her breeding, her entire life. It was all a lie. Her family had been ruined in the crash, and they had been saved anonymously by the very family she was now trying to destroy. He looked at his mother on that stage, pontificating about common stock and thoroughbreds. She was a hypocrite on a level he had never imagined. His phone buzzed again. "Mike, the PI. One last thing, boss. This museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you're in the legacy wing, right? I just pulled the charter. The entire wing was built in 1902. It wasn't built by the DeWitts or the Astors. It was anonymously endowed by one family. The name on the original charter, the Hawthorne Bequest." Marcus looked up. He looked at the stage. He looked at his mother's smug, proud face. He had all the pieces. He wasn't just going to make a scene. He was going to end the war. He stepped out of the shadows and began to walk up the small stairs onto the stage. "Marcus, darling, what are you doing?" Beatrice whispered, her smile not faltering for the audience, but her eyes flashing with fury. "I'm in the middle of my speech." "I know," Marcus said, walking past her to the podium. He gently took the microphone from its stand. His mother tried to grab it, but he was too quick. The hall fell silent. A billionaire son interrupting his matriarch mother at her own gala. This was drama, the likes of which they had only dreamed. "Thank you, Mother," Marcus said, his voice amplified, deadly calm. A beautiful speech, especially the part about legacy. Beatrice's smile was a frozen, terrified rictus. "Marcus, this is not the time. Get off the stage." "Oh, it's exactly the time," Marcus said, turning to the audience. The spotlight was on him now. He could see every shocked face. He could see Serafina, who had stood up, her hand over her mouth. "My mother has spent the last year," Marcus began, his voice clear and cutting, "telling me and all of you about the importance of legacy, about pedigree and breeding. She has made it very clear that she believes my wife, Serafina, has none." Beatrice lunged for the mic. "He's had too much to drink," she cried out to the crowd. Marcus held it easily out of her reach. "I'm perfectly sober, Mother, but you're about to wish I wasn't. You see, I've just been doing a little reading about legacy." He looked out at the crowd. "You all know me as new money, a tech billionaire, and you know my mother as old money. The grande dame of New York, who chairs this gala in this beautiful museum." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "My mother is chairwoman," he continued, "raising money for this museum. So she must know who the single largest donor to this museum is. Don't you, Mother?" Beatrice was ashen. "The donors are many. They are private. But there's one main one, isn't there?" Marcus pressed. "The one who signed the original charter in 1880, the one who funded this very wing we are standing in, the Hawthorne bequest." A collective gasp went through the room. The name Hawthorne hung in the air. Serafina, at her table, was now pale, staring at Marcus, her eyes wide with confusion. She clearly had no idea. "A lovely name, isn't it?" Marcus said. "A name that has, I've just learned, anonymously funded. Let's see." He pulled out his phone, pretending to read a list. Atherton University, the New York Philharmonic, the Children's Mercy Hospital, and of course, this very museum. A family that, generations ago, decided that society was hollow and gave away a Gilded Age fortune to build this city. And then they just disappeared, settled in a quiet, small town, a village, if you will, a place called Willow Creek. The room was so quiet you could hear a diamond drop. "My mother," Marcus said, his voice dropping, "just called my wife a poor village girl, a parasite, common stock. She humiliated her at the door and denied her entry to this event. An event, I've just learned, that is being held in a building her family paid for." He turned to his mother. Beatrice was trembling, clutching the podium to stay upright. "But here's the best part, isn't it, Mother?" Marcus said, his voice filled with a cold rage. "You love legacy. Let's talk about your legacy. The Vanderbilt DeWitts. I've just seen the ledgers. 1929, the stock market crash. Your family was ruined, bankrupt, wiped out, until an anonymous donation of $50 million saved you." He looked back at the crowd. "An anonymous grant from the Willow Creek Foundation, the same foundation, run by the same family." He let that sink in. "My mother's entire life," he boomed, "her legacy, her pedigree, the money she used to buy her way into this world, was a handout, a charitable donation from the very family she now scorns. She is not a thoroughbred. She is the common stock they so generously and so quietly lifted up." The silence in the grand hall was absolute. It was a crushing, heavy void. Every eye was on the stage, flitting between the ashen-faced Beatrice, the thunderous Marcus, and the utterly shell-shocked Serafina, who was still standing by her table, a statue in an emerald gown. Marcus, his arm still firmly around his wife, stepped forward. He was no longer just a son or a husband. He was an executioner. He looked not at his mother, but at the gathered crowd. He looked at Mrs. Astor Blackwood, at Mrs. Vanderbilt Hayes, at the governor. He looked at every person who had ever slighted his wife, every person who had traded on his mother's false legacy. For an entire year, Marcus said, his voice now a quiet, conversational tone that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. My mother has operated under a misunderstanding she has been very, very public about. He began to walk slowly across the stage, as if addressing a courtroom. She has been obsessed with legacy, with pedigree, with the idea that my wife, Serafina, was common, that she was a poor village girl who didn't belong. He stopped, standing directly over the spot where his mother had collapsed. The irony, the beautiful, terrible irony, is that my mother's entire life has been dedicated to this museum. She is the chairwoman, after all. She raises millions. She must know the history of this building. He looked directly at a pale-faced Charles Blackwood, the museum's chairman, in the front row. But perhaps she doesn't. Perhaps she never read the original charter, the 1880 charter that endowed this museum, the 1902 charter that built this very legacy wing we are all standing in. Perhaps she didn't see the name on it. He let the silence hang for a beat. The Hawthorne bequest. A new sound entered the room. It was not a gasp. It was 1,000 sharp, sudden intakes of breath. Serafina, standing on the stage, felt her knees go weak. Hawthorne? Her mind was spinning. No, it's a coincidence. It must be. We're farmers. We're... A lovely name, isn't it? Marcus said, his voice laced with a cold irony. A name that has, I've just learned, anonymously funded. Let's see. He pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket, a gesture so modern it was almost violent in this context. Atherton University, the New York Philharmonic, the Children's Mercy Hospital, a family that, generations ago, decided society was a hollow, gilded cage, and gave away a Gilded Age fortune to build this city, and then they just disappeared, vanished from the society pages, settled in a quiet, small town, a village, if you will, a place called Willow Creek. This time the sound was a groan. Mrs. Astor Blackwood, a woman famed for her composure, looked physically ill. She was mentally replaying every snub, every whispered insult, every dismissive wave. She hadn't just insulted a poor girl, she had insulted her patron. Beatrice, on the floor, began to stir. Her eyes fluttered open. A security guard was moving toward her, but Marcus waved him off. He wanted her to be awake for this. But here's the best part, Marcus said, his voice dropping. He walked over and crouched down, not to help his mother, but to look her in the eye. You love legacy, Mother. Let's talk about your legacy, the Vanderbilt DeWitts. Beatrice froze. Her eyes widened, not in a faint, but in a new, cold terror. This was not about Sarah anymore. This was about her. I've just seen the ledgers, Marcus said, his voice a whisper that was nonetheless broadcast by the microphone still clutched in his hand. 1929. The stock market crash. Your family was ruined, bankrupt, wiped out. Common stock, I believe, was the term you used. You would have been nothing. Your father would have been in a bread line, until an anonymous donation of $50 million saved you. He stood up, turning back to the horrified audience. An anonymous grant from the Willow Creek Foundation. He let the two names hang in the air, connecting like an electric current. Hawthorne bequest, Willow Creek Foundation. My mother's entire life, he boomed, his voice finally rising. Her legacy, her pedigree, the money she used to buy her way into this world, was a handout, a charitable donation from the very family she now scorns. She is not a thoroughbred. She is the common stock they so generously and so quietly lifted up. Beatrice DeWitt let out a sound. It was not a word. It was a horrible, animalistic noise of pure, abject desolation. Her entire identity, her one source of power and pride, had been incinerated in front of the only people whose opinions she valued. Marcus looked at her, his face a mask of cold judgment. Then he looked at Serafina, and his entire expression softened. He walked to her, through the wreckage of his mother's life, and took her trembling hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, holding Serafina's hand up as if she were a queen. "My mother wanted to talk about legacy. Allow me to introduce you to ours. My wife, Serafina Hawthorne DeWitt." He paused, then delivered the final, devastating blow, his voice ringing through the grand hall. The sole heir to the Hawthorne legacy, the woman whose poor family, in their village, owns the charter to this building, the land your legacy is built on, and the financial paper that saved my mother's family from obscurity. He turned to the gasping, horrified woman on the floor. "You asked me what right she had to be here, Mother," Marcus said. "The truth is that she is the only person in this room who truly belongs. We are all just guests in her house." A camera flashed, then another, then 100. The spell was broken. The room exploded. It wasn't loud cheering. It was a deafening roar of whispers, of frantic gossip, of society itself recalibrating in real time. Mrs. Vanderbilt Hayes, who had ignored Sarah all night, was now desperately trying to catch her eye, a horrifying, fawning smile plastered on her face. Beatrice, seeing the cameras, seeing the looks on the faces of her friends, not pity but a new, terrifying respect for Serafina, finally understood. She had not just lost an argument. She had lost everything. And Serafina, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. She hadn't processed the money, or the museum, or the history. She was still reeling from the fundamental, earth-shattering betrayal of her own family. She looked at the flashing lights, at the sea of grasping faces, at the woman in a heap on the floor, and she felt a wave of nausea. She tugged on Marcus's hand, her voice a small, broken whisper that only he could hear. "Marcus, please take me home." Home. The word was a question mark. She didn't mean the penthouse. She meant Willow Creek. She needed to see her parents. She needed to know who she was. Marcus looked at her, and in his eyes she saw not triumph, but a deep, protective understanding. He had won the war, but he now saw the cost. He put his arm around her, shielding her from the flashes. "Let's go." They didn't run. They walked, straight off the stage, down the center aisle, and through the grand entrance of the legacy wing. The crowd, a mix of billionaires, senators, and socialites, parted for them like the Red Sea. They no longer saw a sparrow. They saw the quiet, unshakable power that had been pulling their strings all along. As they reached the door, Serafina paused. She looked back one last time. She saw her mother-in-law, Beatrice, still on the floor. No one was helping her. They were all too busy watching the real legacy walk away. The chaos of the gala seemed to happen at a great distance, as if Serafina was watching it all from the bottom of a deep, clear pool. The crash of a champagne flute, the frantic shouting of security, the blinding staccato of camera flashes. It was all muted, a pantomime of disaster. She felt Marcus's hand, a solid, warm anchor, grip hers. His words, "Let's go, we're going home," were the only thing that felt real. The word home echoed in her mind. Did he mean the sterile, glass-walled penthouse in Manhattan, or the quiet, tree-lined street in Willow Creek? The question was a paradox, because she suddenly, agonizingly, realized she didn't know what home meant. Both, it seemed, were built on a foundation of lies. They didn't speak to the press. Marcus was a thundercloud in a bespoke tuxedo, shielding her with his body as security carved a path through the swarm of reporters. The ride down in the elevator was silent. The ride home in the back of the Rolls-Royce was louder, but only with the sounds of the city they were leaving behind. Serafina stared out the window, watching the glittering lights of Manhattan blur past. Her emerald dress felt like a costume. The woman who had put it on, a woman nervous about fitting in, had been a simple librarian. The woman in the car now. Who was she? "I'm going to ruin her, Sarah," Marcus finally said, his voice a low growl. The adrenaline from the confrontation was still pumping through him. "I will call the boards. I will freeze her assets. She will never host a party, attend a gala, or even get a dinner reservation in this city again. What she did—" Serafina turned from the window. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and unfocused. She was not angry. She was not triumphant. She was shattered. "You didn't know," she whispered. It wasn't a question. Marcus's righteous fury evaporated, replaced by a cold dread. He was looking at his wife, but she was a stranger. "No, God, no. Sarah, I thought you were— what you said. I thought they were— I didn't care. I loved you." "But it wasn't the truth," she said, her voice small, like a child's. "You fell in love with a story. A character." "I fell in love with you," he insisted, taking her hands. They were cold as ice. "Your kindness, your mind, the way you look at the world, that is not a lie. Isn't it?" She pulled her hands away, not in anger, but in a gesture of profound weariness. "My whole life. My parents. They let me. They let me be humiliated. They let me believe I was small." She looked at her hands, the hands of a librarian, not an heiress. "They told me, work hard, Sarah. Be humble, Sarah." All the while, this thing was sitting under me. They weren't teaching me humility. It was a deception. The accusation hung in the opulent car. Marcus had no answer. He had just won a war against his mother, only to realize he was now in a new, far more complicated one. Not for his wife, but with her. "Where are we going?" she asked, as the car bypassed the turn for their penthouse. "You said it yourself," Marcus replied, his voice gentle now. "The lie. We can't fix it from here. We're going to Willow Creek." The drive took 3 hours. They arrived as the first hint of grey dawn was breaking over the small town. Willow Creek. It looked different to her now. The quaint bakery on Main Street. Was it just a bakery, or was it a Hawthorne bequest property, its rent subsidized by her ancestors? The town hall, the library she loved, the park. Was it a community, or was it a curated, Gilded Age terrarium? The car rolled to a stop in front of the modest Hawthorne home, a beautiful white colonial that had always just been home. Her parents, Arthur and Elizabeth Hawthorne, were on the porch. They were not in their pajamas. They were dressed, Arthur in his usual pressed slacks and a flannel shirt, Elizabeth in a simple dress. They were holding coffee mugs, and they were waiting. The news, Serafina realized, traveled faster than a Rolls-Royce. Marcus got out and opened her door. Serafina stood, the emerald silk of her gala gown looking absurd in the misty morning light. She walked, her heels sinking slightly into the soft grass, toward the two people she loved most in the world, the two people who had lied to her every single day of her life. "Mum! Dad!" Her voice cracked. Elizabeth Hawthorne's face, usually a portrait of serene warmth, was etched with a deep, complicated pain. She stepped forward, her arms open. "Oh, Serafina, my darling girl. We saw the news." Serafina flinched. She stepped back, out of the reach of her mother's embrace. The rejection was a physical blow. Elizabeth's arms fell. "Why?" Seraphina's voice was a raw whisper. "Why did you let me?" "Let you what, darling?" Arthur said, his voice the steady, calm baritone that had always soothed her. "Let you grow up without the poison of a name. Let you learn the value of work. Let you become a person, not a price tag. Let me be humiliated," she cried, the dam of her numbness finally breaking. A hot, angry tear rolled down her cheek. "You let me be called a poor village girl, a parasite. You stood there at our wedding, smiling, knowing I was marrying into a family that you saved from ruin, and you said nothing. You let me be afraid of her. You let me think I was the one who wasn't good enough." Marcus stood back, his hands in his pockets, watching. This was not his fight. "Good enough?" Arthur said, stepping forward. He was not a farmer. He was, as Marcus had surmised, a scholar. But more than that, he was a steward. "Seraphina, what is good enough? Is it a name on a ledger? Is it a wing in a museum? We raised you to believe that your character was your net worth, that your kindness was your currency. Was that a lie? Was the person you were yesterday the woman Marcus fell in love with? Was she nothing?" "She was disarmed," Marcus said, unable to stay silent. He stepped forward, joining Seraphina on the grass, his hand finding the small of her back. "With all due respect, Arthur, you're not wrong about the value of character. But you're not right, either. You didn't just protect her from the money, you protected her from the truth. You sent her into a war zone, into a family of sharks, without the one weapon that could have saved her. You made her vulnerable to Beatrice, and your secret, it wasn't for her protection. It was for yours." That hung in the air. Arthur and Elizabeth looked at each other. It was a truth they had, perhaps, never admitted to themselves. "We saw what it did," Elizabeth whispered, her eyes pleading with her daughter. "My great-grandfather, Jonathan Hawthorne, he was a name. He was a bequest, and it destroyed him. His friends were sycophants. His wife, she was a transaction. We wanted you to be loved, Sarah. For you. We wanted you to be real." "And was I?" Seraphina asked, her voice hollow. "Was I real? Or was I just a part of your experiment? A story you were telling yourselves?" She didn't wait for an answer. She pushed past them, the silk of her gown brushing the doorframe, and walked into the house that was no longer just a home, but a monument to a secret she was just beginning to understand. The next few days were a blur. The world, it turned out, was very, very loud. Seraphina's phone, a simple smartphone with a cracked screen, became the most important device on the planet. It rang and rang and rang. At first, she didn't answer. She sat in her girlhood room, in her old pajamas, staring at the ceiling. Marcus became her gatekeeper. He sat in the living room with her father, the two men drinking coffee in a tense, respectful silence, as Marcus's laptop and 3 new phones he'd had overnighted lit up like a Christmas tree. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Vogue. Everyone wanted the story of the secret heiress, the librarian who owned the Met. But it wasn't the press that finally broke through. It was a call that came on the 4th day, not to Sarah's phone, but to the Hawthorne's old black rotary phone in the kitchen. Seraphina, drawn by the novelty of the sound, picked it up. "Hello?" There was a pause, a huff, then a deeply shocked, aristocratic voice. "Seraphina? Is that you? This is Charles Blackwood, the chairman of the Metropolitan Museum. Mrs. Astor Blackwood's... My dear girl." Seraphina, still in her pajamas, leaned against the kitchen wall. "Hello, Mr. Blackwood." "My dear," the man stammered, his voice stripped of all its former pomposity. A terrible misunderstanding. A frightful, frightful evening. I cannot apologize enough on behalf of the board. Beatrice DeWitt, of course, has been asked to resign from all her posts. All of them. The board, we met this morning, and we were hoping, well, we were wondering if you, as the representative of the Hawthorne bequest, if you would consider taking her seat. As chairwoman. Serafina looked out the kitchen window. A blue jay was pecking at the bird feeder. Her father was in the garden, tying up tomato plants. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice clear and even. I'm at a library right now. We're about to start story time. You... What? And after that, I'm helping my father with his tomatoes. I don't think I have time to be a chairwoman. But, she said, and for the first time in days, a small, genuine smile touched her lips. I will be sending my husband, Marcus, to the next board meeting. He has some ideas about the legacy wing. He'll be in touch. Goodbye. She hung up the phone. She turned around. Marcus was standing in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. He was looking at her with an expression of such profound awe and, yes, intrigue, that it made her heart skip a beat. You know, he said, walking toward her, that bequest, that foundation, it's just been sitting, running on autopilot, buying museums, bailing out Vanderbilt DeWitts. It's just been existing, but it hasn't been aimed. Aimed? She asked. You and I, he said, taking her hands. We're very different. You're a Hawthorne. You're quiet. You're deep. I'm a DeWitt. I'm a builder. I'm loud. He grinned. What if we did this together? What if we aimed it? The Hawthorne DeWitt Foundation. We could change everything. This was the man she fell in love with. Not the billionaire, the man who saw a problem and wanted to build a solution. I think I'd like that, she said. The last loose end was Beatrice. She tried to call, of course. She called Marcus's phone. He blocked her. She called his office. He had her blacklisted. She called the penthouse, the Hamptons estate, his jet. Nothing. She was an outcast, a social leper. Finally, a week later, a call came to Serafina's phone, a blocked number. Serafina, who was now screening calls, was about to decline it, but something made her answer. Hello? Serafina. The voice was not the booming, confident matriarch. It was a dry, brittle, aged whisper. Serafina, dear. Sarah's blood ran cold. Beatrice, I am at the house in the Hamptons. It's very quiet here. A long pause. I was ill, you know, at the Gala. My heart, the doctor said. It was a terrible shock. I'm sure it was, Serafina said, her voice flat. I have had time to reflect, Beatrice continued, and Serafina could hear the old, calculating tone creeping back in. This wasn't an apology. It was a negotiation. It seems I misjudged. Your family, they are formidable, of our class, a different branch, of course, but the same tree. I see that now. The real families. The real families, Serafina repeated, her grip tightening on the phone. Yes, and as we are. Family. Now properly, I thought. We should have lunch. Just us. We can discuss the future. The DeWitt name. The Hawthorne name. We can be an alliance. We can... Beatrice. Serafina cut her off. Her voice was not small. It was not the sparrow's voice. It was the deep, calm, immovable voice of the Hawthornes. Beatrice, you don't have a class anymore. You don't have an alliance to offer. You are a woman who was cruel to me because you thought you could be. I was trying to teach you. You were trying to break me, Serafina corrected, because you were, and you are, a small, unhappy person. The only legacy you have, the one I paid for, is the money. And you don't even have the power from that anymore. I'm not going to have lunch with you, Beatrice. I'm not going to see you. I'm not going to ruin you the way you and Marcus wanted to. I'm just going to forget you. You don't matter. She didn't slam the phone down. She pressed end with a quiet finality. She didn't block the number. She just dismissed her. She had, in that moment, done what no one in New York had ever been able to do. She had made Beatrice DeWitt irrelevant. Life did not go back to normal. It found a new normal. The story ends 1 month later. Not 6. They didn't need that long. Serafina is in the Willow Creek Library. But she is not just reading. The Willow Creek Foundation is holding its first ever public board meeting. The board is Serafina, her parents, Arthur and Elizabeth, and Marcus. The room is filled with children for story time, but also with reporters who are now, finally, invited. Serafina, in jeans and a simple blue sweater, stands up. "My family," she says, her voice echoing in the quiet room, believed in quiet philanthropy. They believed in building things, like this library, and then letting them speak for themselves. And I admire that. But my husband, she smiles at Marcus, believes the best way to build something is to be, well, a little loud about it. Laughter. "So today," she continues, "we are announcing the Hawthorne DeWitt Initiative. We are going to build 1,000 new public libraries across this country, in every village that needs one." A gasp, a flurry of camera shutters. "And we are going to fund them, not with a bequest, but with a promise, that no one, no matter who they are or where they come from, should ever be made to feel small or common for wanting to learn. That is our new legacy." She finishes. The room erupts in applause. Her father, Arthur, is crying. Her mother is beaming. Marcus walks up to her, not with coffee, but with a simple, worn copy of The Great Gatsby. "Ready, Madam Chairwoman?" he whispers, his eyes full of a love so deep it's its own legacy. Serafina takes the book. She looks at her husband, her family, and the children waiting. She is not a poor village girl or a secret heiress. She is not a parasite or a queen. She is just Serafina. And for the first time in her life, that is truly and completely everything. "I'm ready," she says, and walks to the center of the room. "Okay, everyone. Chapter 1. In the end, it wasn't the billions of dollars or the ancient family names that defined them. It was the truth of Serafina's kindness, which was her real inheritance, and the truth of Marcus's love, which was his greatest asset. Beatrice DeWitt built her world on a foundation of lies, only to have it torn down by the one person she underestimated. True legacy isn't what you own, it's what you build, and the love Marcus and Sarah built was stronger than any fortune. What did you think of Beatrice's downfall? Have you ever seen someone so spectacularly wrong about another person? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories where humility and truth win the day, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more real-life drama.